You are working harder than any generation in human history. You have access to more information, more entertainment, more connection, more comfort than any king or emperor who ever lived. And yet, something is wrong. Something quiet and persistent and impossible to name. The suicide rate is climbing. Loneliness is now classified as a public health epidemic. Anxiety is the most common mental health condition on the planet. And the people most likely to report feeling empty are not the poor. They are the educated, the successful, the productive. The people who have everything the world said would be enough. There is a book in your Bible that already knew this was coming. 3,000 years ago. It described your life with surgical precision. And most Christians have never read it carefully, because the people who were supposed to teach it were afraid of what it says. The book is Ecclesiastes, and it does not open with comfort. It opens with a verdict. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. All is vanity, meaningless, breath, vapor. Today, we're going all the way in. Every uncomfortable passage, every modern problem. And the answer that is hiding at the end, that almost no one reaches because most people stop reading when it gets painful. Stay with me, because what this book diagnoses and what it prescribes will change how you see everything. The author calls himself Qohelet. It is a Hebrew word that comes from the root qahal, meaning assembly, congregation, gathering. The name means something like the assembler, the one who gathers people together to speak truth to them. Tradition links Qohelet with Solomon. And whether or not we take that connection as literal history or as a literary device, the character being constructed here is unmistakable. A man of staggering wealth, unlimited resources, the finest education, political power, 1,000 relationships, who has had every advantage the world can offer, and has used all of it, deliberately, systematically, as an experiment. He is not a depressed pessimist writing from a place of failure. He is a man who succeeded at everything the world calls success, and then reported back on what he found. And what did he find? The Hebrew word he uses 38 times is hebel. Every English Bible translates it differently. Vanity, meaningless, futility, emptiness. But the literal meaning of the word is something far more visceral. Hebel means breath, steam, vapor, the puff of air that leaves your mouth on a cold morning. It exists. You can see it, and then it is gone. It was never going to last. 38 times in 12 chapters, the same word, hovering over everything. This is not poetry for poetry's sake. This is a diagnosis. Let us go through the book directly. Not around it, through it. Problem 1. The work trap. Chapter 2, verse 11. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it. And behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind. There it is. Every person who has worked 80-hour weeks, canceled vacations, sacrificed relationships, stayed late, started early to build something, and then looked at what they built and felt less than they expected to feel. That feeling has a name. Qohelet named it 3,000 years ago. Striving after wind. The modern economy runs on a lie that if you achieve enough, you will feel enough. Qohelet tested that hypothesis with more resources than most nations have ever possessed. His conclusion was unambiguous. Achievement without meaning is not fulfillment. It is exhaustion, wearing a trophy. Problem 2. The knowledge trap. Chapter 1, verse 18. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. This verse has never been more relevant than right now. We live in the information age. We have unprecedented access to facts, data, opinions, analyses, breaking news, expert commentary, historical records, scientific studies. We know more collectively than at any point in human existence. And we are not wiser. We are more anxious, more paralyzed, more overwhelmed. Because information without wisdom does not produce clarity. It produces noise. And noise, without a framework for what matters, produces exactly what Qohelet describes: grief, sorrow, the weight of knowing more than you can process or act on. Social media is the technological fulfillment of this verse. You now have access to every tragedy, every injustice, every political disaster, every catastrophe happening simultaneously in real time around the entire world. And it is making people sick. Qohelet saw this coming. Not the technology, but the human experience of knowing more than you can carry. Problem 3. The injustice problem. Chapter 3, verses 16 and 17. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. Chapter 9, verse 11. The race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all. This is one of the most scandalous verses in the entire Old Testament, and it is in the canon, on purpose, because God wanted honest people to know that He does not flinch from honest questions. Hard work does not always pay off. Talent does not always win. The righteous do not always prosper, and the wicked do not always suffer. If you have watched a good person get cancer, or a dishonest person get promoted, or a corrupt system go unpunished while honest people carry the cost, Qohelet already named what you felt, and he did not apologize for naming it. He recorded it as fact. The church has too often responded to this kind of pain with platitudes that do not hold. God has a plan. Everything happens for a reason. These statements may be theologically true at some level, but delivered prematurely, delivered as a way of silencing the question instead of sitting with it, they land as cruelty. Ecclesiastes gives us permission to sit with the question without immediately producing an answer. Problem 4. The forgetting problem. Chapter 1, verse 11. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those who will come after. Chapter 2, verse 16. For of the wise man as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come, all will have been long forgotten. This is the one that modern culture cannot tolerate. We are obsessed with legacy, with leaving a mark, with building something that lasts, with being remembered. The entire machinery of social media is, at its core, a response to this terror. Post enough, share enough, accumulate enough followers, and you will have mattered. You will have been seen. You will not simply disappear into the silence. But Qohelet, who built more than you will ever build, who ruled more people than you will ever influence, who wrote words that are still being read 3 millennia later, said plainly, history forgets. Not some people. All people. Eventually, the work you are doing to be remembered is work being done for something that cannot hold the weight you are placing on it. Problem 5. The relationship trap. Chapter 4, verse 4. Then I saw that all toil and all skill in work come from a man's envy of his neighbor. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. We are building our lives in comparison. Our houses are sized relative to our neighbors' houses. Our salaries feel adequate or inadequate based on what people in our social circle earn. Our children's achievements are measured against other children's achievements. Our bodies are evaluated against other bodies. Our relationships are performed in front of an audience. And Qohelet names the engine driving all of this in one devastating word: envy. Not aspiration, not growth. Envy, the engine of the modern economy, the engine of social media, the engine of most of our striving is comparison. Wanting not because you need it, but because someone else has it. Problem 6, the power trap. Chapter 4, verses 13 through 16. A young man rises from prison to take the throne. Everyone loves him. Enormous crowds follow him. Then the crowds thin. A new generation arises that does not know him. His power meant nothing permanent. Political power, institutional authority, cultural influence. Qohelet watched them all cycle. Kings rise and are forgotten. Movements peak and dissolve. Institutions that seemed permanent collapse. Every generation believes it is the generation that will finally get it right, that will build the lasting thing, that will be the exception to the pattern. Every generation is wrong. Problem 7, the pleasure trap. Chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. Qohelet built gardens and parks. He acquired singers and entertainers. He gathered silver and gold and the cultural treasures of kingdoms. He did not deny himself any pleasure he desired. He held on to wisdom throughout. He was not naive about what he was doing. He was a controlled experiment. His conclusion: "Then I considered all that my hands had done, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind." The entertainment industry is built on the implicit promise that the next thing will finally be enough. The next movie, the next trip, the next experience, the next relationship, the next high. And yet the hedonic treadmill keeps spinning. The baseline resets, the pleasure fades. The next thing is required. This is not a malfunction. Qohelet is telling us it is the nature of the thing. Pleasure consumed purely under the sun, purely horizontally, with no vertical dimension, cannot do what we are asking it to do. It was not designed to carry that weight. We are not designed to be satisfied by it permanently. There is a phrase Qohelet uses 29 times. 29 times. And almost no one who quotes this book quotes it. Because it is the key that unlocks everything, and people skip it because they are afraid of where it leads. The phrase is, under the sun. Every problem Qohelet identifies, every vanity, every futility, every injustice, every disappointment is qualified by that phrase. Under the sun. Life lived purely on the horizontal. Life defined only by what can be seen, measured, achieved, and experienced between birth and death. Life with no vertical dimension, life with no reference to anything beyond itself. This is not fatalism. This is not nihilism. This is a precise diagnostic qualifier. Qohelet is not saying that life is meaningless. He is saying that life viewed only under the sun, only through the lens of what you can accomplish and accumulate and experience before you die, will always produce the experience of meaninglessness. Because the human soul was designed for more than what the horizontal axis can provide. The modern world has removed the vertical axis almost entirely from the way most people construct their lives. Secular therapy, productivity culture, self-actualization, achievement metrics. These are all horizontal systems. They operate entirely under the sun. And they produce exactly the crisis Qohelet described. Not because they are bad, but because they are insufficient. They are treating a vertical problem with horizontal tools. Here is what most people miss. Ecclesiastes is not the diagnosis alone. The diagnosis is designed to produce a specific response. Qohelet is building a case systematically, brick by brick, section by section. He is constructing an argument that is airtight by the end, that life lived purely under the sun, without reference to God, without fear of God, without orienting the self toward eternity, will always produce the experience of emptiness, no matter how successful the life appears. This is the same argument Paul makes in Romans chapter 8, verse 20. The creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope. The Greek word Paul uses for futility is meteotes. It is the exact Greek word used in the Septuagint, the ancient Greek translation of the Old Testament, to translate Qohelet's hebel. Paul is quoting Ecclesiastes. He agrees with the diagnosis. The world, as we experience it under the sun, is in vapor mode. Creation itself is groaning under the weight of something it was not designed to carry alone. But Paul adds two words that Qohelet can only point toward: in hope. The futility is not permanent. The vapor is not the final state. The creation that was subjected to emptiness is also the creation that is groaning toward something, toward resurrection, toward restoration, toward the renewal of all things. Ecclesiastes asks the question that only the New Testament fully answers. Together, they give the most complete, most honest account of human experience in all of ancient literature. Let us be specific about what this means for the actual problems people are living with right now. Burnout. The epidemic of professional exhaustion that affects every industry in every country. Qohelet named it, "Toil without transcendence produces emptiness." The solution is not fewer work hours, though rest matters. The solution is recovering the sense that your work is oriented towards something beyond productivity metrics. Work done as participation in something larger than personal achievement does not produce the same burnout because it draws from a different well. Anxiety. Clinical anxiety has increased by over 25% globally in the last decade alone. At its root, stripped of neurological complexity, which is real and should be taken seriously, anxiety is the experience of being responsible for outcomes you cannot control. When the self is the highest authority in your life and the self is insufficient, anxiety is the rational response. Qohelet's prescription, fear God, orient yourself toward eternity, is not a simplistic religious slogan. It is a structural solution to a structural problem. It relocates the weight of ultimate responsibility off the self and onto a being actually capable of carrying it. Loneliness. We are more digitally connected than at any point in human history, and more relationally isolated than at any point in recorded human experience. Because digital connection operates entirely under the sun. It is horizontal connection, optimized for performance and comparison rather than genuine presence. Qohelet in chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, makes the case for genuine human partnership. Two are better than one, and a cord of three strands is not quickly broken. The third strand is not metaphorical decoration. It is the vertical axis holding the relational structure together. Meaninglessness. The clinical term is existential depression. The feeling that nothing ultimately matters, that action is pointless, that the future is indistinguishable from the present. Qohelet did not have a clinical term for it. He just described it with devastating accuracy as the inevitable endpoint of life lived without a vertical reference. The antidote is not positive thinking. The antidote is genuine reorientation of the life around something that actually holds the weight of eternity. The comparison economy. Envy, which Qohelet names in chapter 4, verse 4, as the engine behind most human striving, has been algorithmically weaponized. Social media platforms are designed, not accidentally, but intentionally, to maximize comparison, to keep you seeing what you do not have, to keep the gap between your life and the curated lives of others perpetually visible. Qohelet's instruction is not to unplug completely, though seasons of rest from comparison are wise. His instruction is to locate your worth in something that does not move with the comparison market. Fear God, keep his commandments. These are not arbitrary religious duties. They are structural anchors against the vertigo of an identity built on comparison. Most people who talk about Ecclesiastes quote chapter 1 and stop. Or they quote the beautiful passage about seasons in chapter 3, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, without reading what Qohelet says immediately afterward, which is that he is still confused about whether any of it means anything. The book has 12 chapters. Most people do not reach chapter 12. Here is what is at the end. Chapter 12, verses 13 and 14. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment, with every secret thing, whether good or evil. After 12 chapters of unblinking honesty about every way that life under the sun disappoints, after naming every trap, every futility, every injustice, after refusing every easy answer, after sitting in the fog longer than most preachers are willing to sit, Qohelet does not conclude that nothing matters. He concludes that the orientation of the whole life matters more than anything else. Fear God. This is not the fear of a person who might be punished. The Hebrew word is yira. It carries the weight of awe, of reverence, of being in the presence of something so much larger than yourself that your normal categories of comparison dissolve. The person who has this fear is not smaller for it. They are finally properly sized relative to reality. Keep his commandments, not as a performance for social approval, not as a transaction for blessing, as the structural alignment of a life around the only axis that holds, because God will bring every deed into judgment, meaning that nothing done in hiddenness is ultimately meaningless. The acts of quiet faithfulness that no one sees. The kindness given when no one was watching. The work done with integrity when fraud would have been easier. Qohelet is telling you, those things are not lost. They are not forgotten by the only one whose forgetting matters. The fog does not fully clear in Ecclesiastes, but the direction becomes clear. You do not need to see everything from here. You need to know which way to walk. If you have ever sat in a church that gave you easy answers to hard questions and felt something die in you, Ecclesiastes is for you. If you have ever built something you were proud of and felt less than you expected to feel when you finished, Ecclesiastes is for you. If you have ever worked as hard as you possibly could and still felt like the ground kept shifting beneath you, Ecclesiastes is for you. If you have ever been honest enough to admit that the race is not always to the swift, and the good are not always protected, and the world does not always make sense, Ecclesiastes is for you. The Bible made room for this book, not reluctantly, on purpose, because the God who designed human beings knew that the soul's honest experience of life under the sun would sometimes feel exactly like this. And he wanted you to know, your honesty about that is not a crisis of faith. It is the beginning of wisdom. The vapor is real. The fog is real. The disappointment is real. Ecclesiastes does not deny any of it. But underneath all of it, beneath every layer of honest darkness, there is a direction. Fear God, keep his commandments, not because it erases the questions, but because it gives you something real to walk toward while you are still living inside them. The teacher has spoken. The question is whether you are willing to hear what he actually said.